South Korea's rock star president Moon Jae-in greeting a tall group in the garden of his office and residence, the Blue House in Seoul. At 64, President Moon is one of South Korea's most popular leaders. In his first 100 days in office, his approval rating was nearly 80%, the second highest in South Korea's history. When he won the presidency in May, it was clear by the majority vote that South Korea wanted a change, a new vision, from his predecessor Park Geun-hye, who was the first South Korean president to be impeached. Younger voters were attracted to Moon's campaign vows to address social inequality and the lack of economic opportunity. But many in the older generation were disheartened by what they saw as a softer stance on Pyongyang, which called for greater diplomacy between the two Koreas. Still, many look to President Moon to be a healer as the country reels from a massive corruption scandal and heightened tensions between North Korea and the United States. This month, we sit down with President Moon at the Blue House to get his perspective on North Korea. Now, Kim Jong-un has stated he will never give up his nuclear weapons. It is part of state ideology. Do you truly believe that you can convince Kim Jong-un to give up nuclear weapons? And he tells us why, for him, the unfolding crisis strikes a more personal note. Your parents fled North Korea during the Korean War. What did your parents tell you of their escape? President Moon Jae-in, welcome to Talk Asia. If I could start with North Korea, how dangerous is the situation on the Korean Peninsula at the moment?
우선은 북한이
North Korea continues to make very wrong decisions, so I'm very frustrated and I'm saddened to see this. It's a very reckless choice made by North Korea that is not helpful to North Korea itself or inter-Korean relations and threatens world peace. One thing that North Korea needs to take notice of is that this time the UN Security Council made a decision to ban petroleum products and oil to North Korea, and this was a very intensive sanctions measure. The entire international community supported this decision, so North Korea needs to concentrate on these measures. North Korea needs to come out of this international isolation, and they need to understand that they cannot guarantee their own security through nuclear and missile weapons, but through peaceful exchange with the international community.
Now, you mentioned that the UN Security Council resolution, the sanctions impose a cap on crude oil exports to North Korea. It's not the total ban that you'd called for when you were in Russia. And the US President Donald Trump has even questioned whether or not it'll have any kind of impact. Do you think it will make a difference, these sanctions?
우선은 이 안보리 결의가
With regards to the UN Security Council resolution, I believe it is very important that this resolution was adopted unanimously within the UN Security Council and was adopted with the full support of the whole international community. This was also adopted with the support of China and Russia, and they also pledged that they will faithfully implement this resolution. This resolution also reflects that North Korea provocations are no longer just a threat to the peace and security of Northeast Asia, but is also a global threat and a threat to the international community. I don't know whether North Korea will stop its provocations in the face of these sanctions measures. And this is something that North Korea must decide, but I believe this is a very important start by the international community.
Now, Kim Jong-un has stated he will never give up his nuclear weapons. It is part of state ideology. He's written it into the constitution. Do you truly believe that you can convince Kim Jong-un to give up nuclear weapons?
일단 북한의 핵 개발은
I believe maybe North Korea, through its development of its nuclear program, wants to guarantee regime security. And maybe North Korea, through being accepted as a nuclear power state, wants to sit down at the negotiating table with the United States for North Korea-US normalization. However, the international community will never accept a nuclear North Korea, and in particular, my country will never accept a nuclear North Korea.
And Mr. President, we've certainly seen a stronger military response from South Korea to the North Korean tests, the long-range missile tests, the decapitation drills. I mean, does South Korea have an assassination squad that's ready to take out Kim Jong-un if need be?
우선
First of all, if North Korea actually provokes using nukes and missiles, South Korea and the U.S. will neutralize the threat at an early moment. We do have these firm combined defense capabilities. However, we do not have a hostile policy towards North Korea. We do not have the intention to attack North Korea, and we do not have the intention to reunify the Korean Peninsula in an artificial way or in the manner of absorption. What we want is to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue in a diplomatic and peaceful way. And we would like to proceed together with North Korea towards prosperity through inter-Korean cooperation.
You're very uniquely placed in thinking about North Korea, in being able to deal with the issue, as you are the son of North Korean refugees, and your parents fled North Korea during the Korean War. What did your parents tell you of that experience, of their escape?
My parents fled from North Korea during the Korean War because they despised the North Korean communist regime. They fled to seek for freedom and came to South Korea. And in this process, they also received assistance from the U.S. troops. However, my parents lived as people who fled from their hometown and always longed to go back and again have reunion with their families. However, they were not able to realize this dream. So I believe with North Korea and South Korea, we need to develop a relationship and move toward economic co-prosperity. To move to an economic community, we need to move into a relationship where we can seek reunification. But through this process, we also need to defend and secure our freedom and democratic system. Democracy, freedom, and human rights are the core principles that we need to defend. I don't believe my position towards North Korea that we need to have dialogue and also we need to respond strongly towards North Korea's provocations. I don't think this challenges each other. This is because we cannot allow another war from breaking out on the Korean Peninsula. We need to work towards inter-Korean cooperation, work towards free exchange of people between the two Koreas, and also eventually move towards reunification.
Pyeongchang, 2018, you would like North Korea to be involved in some way. I mean, 5 months out, is that still possible? I mean, has North Korea showed an interest? Since the end of the Korean War over 6 decades ago, South Korea and the United States have stayed close allies. South Korea is under the protection of the US nuclear umbrella, and Seoul recently moved the remaining parts of the American missile defense system THAAD into the country, much to China's anger. While President Moon Jae-in says the two countries are closely coordinating and cooperating on the North Korean threat, President Trump has been accused of undercutting his allies, including his South Korean counterpart. Early September, Trump went on Twitter to criticize what he believes is South Korea's appeasement of the North. And there was this warning back in August.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
In response, Moon tells CNN not to interpret Trump's tweets narrowly and that countries need to stand firm against North Korea's nuclear provocations. He says South Korea and the US are both seeking a peaceful solution in resolving the crisis. Now, Mr. President, we've certainly seen your position towards North Korea become more hardline in recent weeks. From talking about dialogue when you first came to power, now talking about pressure and sanctions. Is this movement as a result of pressure from Washington?
As you know, I had various opportunities to discuss with President Trump through meetings and phone conversations on North Korea's missiles and nuclear provocations. I do not believe that there is any difference in position between South Korea and the United States. Of course, there may be some difference in terms of national positions of South Korea and the national position of the United States in some areas. But in the big picture, in the bigger direction, we're totally on the same page. South Korea and the United States agree that ultimately the North Korean nuclear issue needs to be resolved diplomatically and peacefully. But in order to make the right conditions for dialogue, North Korea must stop its nuclear missile provocations and needs to stop its advancement of its nuclear and missile program. To this, South Korea and the U.S. agree completely.
우선 방금 말씀드린 대로
Through close cooperation with the international community, we're working towards increasing pressure and sanction on North Korea.
그 노력은
But this is not to have any military confrontation with North Korea.
Mr. President, South Korea relies on the United States for the nuclear umbrella, so the protection from Washington. But now the United States is potentially at threat from North Korea as well. Is it time for South Korea to have its own nuclear weapons?
We need to develop our military capabilities in the face of North Korea's nuclear advancement. However, I do not agree that South Korea needs to develop our own nuclear weapons or relocate tactical nuclear weapons in the face of North Korea's nuclear threat. To respond to North Korea by having our own nuclear weapons will not maintain peace on the Korean Peninsula and could lead to a nuclear arms race in the Northeast Asia, which will in turn threaten peace and security in Northeast Asia.
If I could move on to China. China currently has an economic boycott of South Korea, although it doesn't publicly admit that. Now you have brought the remaining parts of the US missile defense system, THAAD, into the country. How are you going to convince China to lift this boycott of your country?
중국과의 관계에 있어서는
With regards to the relationship with China, I believe that we need to not only just resolve the issue with the THAAD retaliatory measures with regards to THAAD deployment, but also we need to recover the relationship with China itself and also further develop our bilateral relations with China. Moreover, we need to work very closely with China in order to resolve the nuclear and missile issue. And to this end, South Korea will exert all its efforts. As you're well aware, China will have its party conventions very shortly, and I believe there may be some difficulties to change its policies with regards to the THAAD deployment. Nonetheless, my government will keep on working towards developing its relationship with China in the long term.
Ahead of the UNGA, President Moon unveiled the medals for the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in New York City. Organisers say the medals were designed by a local South Korean designer and were inspired by the Korean alphabet. During his speech, Moon urged visitors to go to Pyeongchang next February and stressed there was no need to worry about safety as Korea is one of the safest places in the world. Pyeongchang 2018. Obviously, the Winter Olympics will be in Pyeongchang next February. You have said that you would like it to be the Peace Olympics. You would like North Korea to be involved in some way. I mean, 5 months out, is that still possible? I mean, has North Korea showed an interest?
우선 이번 평창 동계올림픽은
First of all, the Pyeongchang 2018 Winter Olympics is the Olympics that will be taking place 30 years since the Seoul Olympics that took place in 1988. In 1988, the Summer Olympics was held in Korea, which was a divided country. In this country, all the countries from the East and the West participated, and this was an opportunity for the East and the West to come together in harmony and also take a significant role in ending the Cold War era.
그리고 냉전 체제를 무너뜨리는데
I believe the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics will also be able to provide an opportunity to the entire international community. I hope that North Korea will also participate, which will provide a very good opportunity for inter-Korean peace and reconciliation. And to do this, we are closely consulting and cooperating with the IOC. Right after the Pyeongchang 2018 Winter Olympics, 2 years later, the 2020 Summer Olympics will be held in Tokyo, and the 2022 Winter Olympics will be held in Beijing. So in 2 years' term, the Olympic Games will be held in Korea, Japan, and China. And I believe that this can provide a good opportunity to build peace and cooperation within the Northeast Asian region. I would like to propose to the leaders of the Northeast Asian countries to this audacious plan.
For 7 decades, South Korea has had a complicated political history, with some key events playing an important role in Moon Jae-in's rise to the presidency. As a law student in the 1970s, Moon was arrested and jailed after taking part in the pro-democracy protests against the then dictatorship of Park Chung-hee, former President Park Geun-hye's father. Moon passed the bar in jail and eventually became a human rights lawyer, fighting for democracy and labour rights during military rule. When friend and colleague Roh Moo-hyun became president in 2003, Moon joined Roh's administration as chief of staff. In his autobiography, Moon mentioned he never felt comfortable in that position and left his job in 2004 to trek the Himalayas. It was after Roh's suicide in 2009 when Moon began his path back into politics. In 2012, he won a parliamentary seat in Busan, the city where he grew up. That same year, he made his first bid for the presidency, just narrowly losing to Park Geun-hye. So, Mr. President, now you are president, you're in the Blue House, you have bodyguards around you, you can't just walk out onto the street. What do you miss?
그렇습니다. 여기 청와대 구조 자체가
That's right. The structure of the Blue House separates itself from people. Even when I'm outside, the bodyguards are always standing between me and the people. So I try to lower the wall of security. I have been making efforts in approaching the people and to be with people, and our people have a high opinion of such effort. I'll keep persisting in this effort.
국민들이 높은 평가를 하고 있다고 봅니다. 앞으로도 지속적인 노력을 해나갈 것입니다.
If I can ask about your activism days, I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, you were on the streets, you were fighting against the man that was in this house, this Blue House. At that point, you were fighting for democracy and imprisoned a couple of times. That must have been difficult at that time. How did you keep going?
그것은 낙관.
That is the power of optimism. It might be difficult to have faith at that moment, but keeping optimistic prospect on the advancement of society, that's what matters. At that time, people said it was like hitting a stone with an egg, but I still believed in the strength of the egg. That mere power of the egg was proven.
So at that time, Mr. President, when you were in prison, did you ever dream that you would end up being president?
제가 무엇이 될 것이라고는
No, I didn't think about becoming something. But I always firmly believed that one day, Korea will be a true democratic nation that ensures the freedom and the human rights of its people.
So these are people that have come to see the Blue House?
그렇습니다.
Yes, the Blue House is open to public, and every day we have visitors multiple times.
목주입니다. 목주입니다. 목주.
아, 고맙습니다. 예.
멋있어요.
그냥 사진 한 찍어줘. 예.
So that happens every day?
예. 매일
Many groups of guests visit every day, but I don't encounter them often. So when the visitors and I bump into each other, we take pictures. People also like that they get to meet the president.
So obviously a lot's happened in recent months. The candlelight vigils, the fact that hundreds of thousands went onto the streets to protest the former occupant of the Blue House, former President Park Geun-hye. You yourself went out as well. But exposed a bitter rift within the society. How can you heal that rift?
사실 뭐 아주 까마득한 시간이 흐른 것 같습니다.
Actually, it feels like it has been a very long time. Looking back, the candlelight protest started from last year, October, and during the whole winter, 17 million people came out to the square in the cold to hold up the candle. And this year in March, the former president Park Geun-hye was impeached, and I became the new president in May. It's been only 4 months. Amid the circumstances, Korea has turned into a completely different country. The atmosphere among the people has also completely changed. I think each new way of doing politics that we are carrying out right now is a part of the healing process for the people. Especially, what the citizens at the candlelight protest yearned for was not dividing the country between conservatives and progressives. It was a sense of duty to create a more sensible and just country that goes beyond the conservatives and progressives. In that, I believe, is a way to unite the Republic of Korea and to heal the wounds of the people.
This is a very high-pressure job. We've seen former presidents, for example, of South Korea. One is currently in prison. One, sadly, took his own life. How do you stay grounded? How do you find solace?
실제로 우리가 그 평온하다거나
In the current circumstance, it's not easy to say that we are at peace and we are maintaining stability well. The will of the candlelight protest was united as one, and that is how the new administration was inaugurated. We are still in a political circumstance where we must reform the nation with a ruling party that is smaller than the opposition party. We are having great difficulty taking care of the tasks that need to be done through the legislature. I think the only solution is to communicate closely with the people and gain their support.
And then finally, Mr. President, what kind of president do you want to be? It's very early on in your tenure, but what's your legacy? What would you like that to be?
진정한 민주주의를 이룩한 대통령.
The president who achieved a true democracy. The president who built a peaceful relationship between the North and the South. The president who achieved a more equal and fair economy, a utilitarian economy. That's how I want to be remembered.
포용적인 경제를 이룩한 대통령. 그렇게 기억되고 싶습니다.
감사합니다.
고마워요. 네.